material to us and the opportunity for us to kind of take a preliminary look in this process. So I know you want to kick this off with us each doing our 4 to 5 minute overview. And so what other comments you'd like to make them please, and then invite the first person to go. I will go last.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon to everyone, commissioners, and Kelly, everyone in attendance. It's good to be back with you all. As the mayor mentioned, this is a important step in a formal process that we've been doing for about 15 or plus years. And several years ago, then Commissioner Don Selvage suggested that a mid-year course correction, less formal feedback exercise would add value and increase the effectiveness of the city manager, or in the other case, of the city attorney. So the idea is to follow the same guidelines as the formal evaluation, but to do it less formally and more focus on, certainly recognize any achievements or expectations that are being met or exceeded, but the emphasis should probably be on any constructive feedback or clarification of expectations that'll allow Sean to step it up and better meet your expectations before we do this formally in about 5 or 6 months. So, without any further ado, as I look across the spectrum here, Commissioner Madden, why don't we start with you? And the mayor has said he'll go last. So 4 or 5 minutes, please, Sean, feel free to ask a question, get clarification. It's a two-way communication. We're not just here, to drag Sean through the broken glass, but to actually give him a chance to ask and clarify. Commissioner?
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Ross. And so certainly going first, I can't really look at any of my other colleagues to see how they went about this, but I went through all the information and then just kind of wanted to give a cheerleading at the beginning with some A+, and then some things that I was wondering about that I actually reached out to Sean about recently and got some clarification, and then kind of give some constructive, points going forward. So A+++ on the strategic planning move to earlier in the year. I know that Sean has heard us for years talking about our opportunity to be involved in the process and to begin that process earlier and not wait till the end of the budget cycle to try to get $10 out of the budget for something that we're passionate about. So kudos and an A+ for really seeing that and planning that when you were coming into your position so early on in January, to turn that around and get that on the books and get everyone scheduled and get us to do that. That was really remarkable and really, really, really appreciated by this commissioner. Certainly then that segues into the whole budget process, kind of starting earlier in the year, so that then we don't have to hear from folks like the police or other people, midsummer, early fall with huge requests and feel powerless to have any time, to persuade our colleagues, certainly we need a majority to move anything forward. And so having that additional time earlier in the year really empowers us to make our position known to our colleagues, to see if there's interest among the group, and then to try to come and get staff involved in making things happen. So thank you so much both for the strategic planning and the budgeting. So great and so grateful. Also, I want to say that, just in the short amount of time to be able to see and hear some of the biggest complaints we get is where our customers, our citizens, meet our staff, and that is in the Community Development Department. And so we are doing more and more inspections and permits, and that's great, and we're growing, but growing includes growing pains. And for you to jump right in there and to make that tweak to our city permit, to be able to make sure the owners are informed as they're going through the permitting process, because they care most about what happens to their property, and that electrician might not pass the word back, or that other inspector might not pass which prolongs the time frame. So small tweaks can make a huge difference, and I'm hoping to see lots and lots more small tweaks, but thank you for that. Also, I cannot say enough amazing things about your leadership with the Lakeland Regional Health negotiations. The speed at which we were able to make that happen when in my 4th year as a commissioner, it's been really difficult to push that forward. Certainly, it is a complicated and visceral discussion that affects our community, it affects healthcare and our city services and what we can do. But for you to just go and tackle that and to persevere with those discussions and to make that happen, I think you got a win-win and amazing job, A+++, on that huge initiative that you spearheaded and tackled and accomplished. Great job. So then I go to just all of it's good, and I'm sure my colleagues will mention a lot of the other ones, but those were my huge highlights and A++. Certainly everyone's going to look to me on the summit, and we're still in the middle, and hopefully we're close, and I see you have that June date, and I'm hopeful with you, but I really can't comment a lot until we see, what happens there. So then my last minute I will just take, when we were going through the city management process of thinking about who could lead our city in this next decade, I know maybe you felt that my passion for your candidacy might not have been, might have been a little lackluster. And it was not because of your character, your integrity, or your qualities. It was really because you, nor I, nor any of my colleagues have had the pleasure of taking a city from where we are now to where we want it to be with the projected growth that we're about to have. And I don't know, unless we want to build a Trump wall around the city of Lakeland, Florida, we are going to be experiencing a lot of growth. And are we prepared? Do we have the leadership necessary to take our city to the next level? And so those were some of my pauses and my concerns in the process of, getting a city manager. And I think that then I said, what I'm going to be looking for is, are you at the tip of the spear at some educational conferences, or are you going to be mingling with people from other cities that we want to emulate, or to want to take go to conferences on best practices, or to do city visits. I know that you've already, signed up this summer for that Making Cities Livable conference, and that's not a Florida-centric conference, which I'm thrilled about. It even has international participation, because I think we need to be looking globally with decommissioning a coal plant and going to renewable energy and making strides to do everything we can to meet some of the federal and the state guidelines that will be passed down to us. Having an electric utility, I think, is hugely important. I think all of my colleagues want innovation to be a prime focus. And if we don't have an innovation officer, then it's going to be up to our city manager, to know what's going on in the best and brightest cities around the world. So thank you for signing up for that first one. I know you've been busy and you've been running fast. But I hope you'll continue to prioritize things like that when you see those opportunities. And then the last thing is, just when we do want to take that next step like Greenville or Chattanooga or some of those other cities, some of the things they've said is, I wish, looking back, we left some folks behind. And I know your heart with being the Bucks and with our Lift Lakeland and all of these things, that is not your hope, and it's not our hope. And so I was thrilled to see some things on here that are addressing those. Specifically, I'll mention the city certified small and minority owned business that I sent you, that they're doing in Tampa. And you said already you've been working with risk and purchasing to do that, purchasing 101 for business and how to do business with Lakeland, and working with HB Homes and Dr. Brisbane with the Well and with Catapult. The more customer-centric and customer-friendly we can make sure our community development department is in particular. Certainly needs to be in our Lakeland Electric staff and in our water staff, because they are servicing customers too. It just seems like most of those are pretty streamlined, unless people have a question on their bill. It's going to start up a new business, having to, get a permit to retrofit your office. Those are the things that are scary for our citizens and our customers. And I know you have a go-to customer-centric attitude, and I want to make sure that that filters down into every single staff member at City of Lakeland. And so that hats off to that initiative, and anything more you can do with that is great. So I think I covered that. I don't know how long it took Larry, but I hope that was fine.
Dr. Ross, your mic's off.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Sean, any questions you have for Commissioner Madden? Any clarification?
Just thank you, Commissioner Madden, for the comments. The one thing that, you made several comments that I very much appreciate. One of the things, though, certainly when you talked about some of the incremental changes that we've made, you gave the example in community development, an economic development department. That's been some of the things I've been talking, with commissioners about and one-on-one is that, sometimes some of the biggest challenges, there's not a silver bullet, but there are those incremental opportunities. And so we will continue to find those incremental changes as we can along the way to just continue to improve, the services that we provide. I also very much appreciate, as I did during the recruitment or the search process for the city manager, the comments and the encouragement to attend other cities, to go on city visits and to go to, conferences. And the one that you had suggested to me is a great one. And I'm looking forward to going to that one. And certainly, when COVID conditions are behind us, there'll be more opportunities for that. And with some of the changes that the commission is going to hear very soon about the city management team, that will also free me up to be able to do those things. And I am very excited about what I can go and learn and bring back here to the city. So I appreciate all of the comments, and we'll continue to focus on those areas that you mentioned with the things that we can do in purchasing and making sure that, we're not leaving our friends and neighbors here in this community behind.
Thank you, Sean. I'm going to move to Commissioner McCarley and Commissioner Music, not to leave you out, but as the newest member, maybe the chance to observe a few more of your colleagues before you go. So we'll let you go just before the mayor, if that's okay. Otherwise, Commissioner McCarley.
Thanks, Dr. Ross. Sean, I echo Commissioner Madden's kudos to you. I'm not going to reiterate those. I think those are universal that we all agree with. And I think you've been doing a good job in those areas. I'm going to talk a little bit more about opportunities. So when I was hesitant in the beginning about your leadership, and I'm thrilled that you have been successful so far. And I'm really pleased with the progress that you've been making. One of my concerns that I'm not concerned with now is what Commissioner Madden was talking about, this incremental change. I'm very excited about that. That's where I was a little concerned about your performance been, and you have exceeded expectations in those areas. Where I would like to see some growth is really from the communication side. I feel like I'm glad that Commissioner Madden echoed that she has good communication with you. I don't necessarily feel that we always have the best communication, so I'm not sure if it's retaliatory from my vote in the beginning of this. I certainly hope it isn't, but I really feel like there are times when you and I are having one-on-one conversations where my requests are not being heard. And I don't know if it's because you and I have known each other a long time, but I know your interpersonal skills, and sometimes that's a little challenging for me, just to be candid, in that when I'm trying to think outside of the box and maybe bring some new ideas to you, I don't feel like they are warmly regarded or entertained. And I think that's something that we can work on together over the next 6 months. I don't think that is a bad thing. I think it's just the nature of you have 7 bosses, and that's difficult. And I understand that completely. And that's one of the other pieces I would just highlight as well, as, you do work with 7 of us. And so although the mayor is here daily, I think sometimes he's ahead of the curve in information that's being shared. And maybe that gives you a sense of security that the rest of us know. And I know from my perspective, I don't always feel like information flows fluidly from you to at least me as a commissioner. I'd like to see that communication flow improve. I know you have a lot on your plate, especially with not having the extra set of hands up here. And that's one of the things too that's a little disconcerting to me, that I don't feel like we've been privy to that process as much. When I've managed other people in the past, I feel like that's something when your bosses are engaged in the process, it makes communication a little bit better universally. So I feel that I've been excluded from that process as far as any communication of just, hey, wait, there's going to be an announcement and we've been waiting on that for quite a while at this point, I think 6 months or so. So that's something that I'm a little bit concerned about is from a leadership perspective. And I think that, you've handled the COVID situation well. I know that this has been a huge curveball when you came into the position, that's not, something that any of us entertained. And I think you've done a good job. A highlight I will say too, when it comes to public safety, what I think you do well with regard to LPD and the fire department, you are quick to communicate anything going on security wise in the city of Lakeland, and that is really, really important. So here, when I say that communication piece is, I think you excel at. It's more of the inner workings of your office that I feel a little bit where I could learn more and be a little bit more privy to things and hear back in the communication more quickly. The strategic plan, I agree with Commissioner Madden. You and I talked about that when you were deputy, and I'm thrilled that got moved forward and pushed up on the calendar. I think that helps us as a commission support you better. And I think that is a really good attribute that you have brought to the table. And I know you're passionate about that, about working with us. So those are really, I'm limited on what I would say. I think that's probably it. I was looking at what Dr. Ross gave us, the 7 areas of focus, and the 2 that I really drilled in on were the communications piece and the relationships with commissioners. So I'm eager to hear my fellow commissioners and how they rate you in those areas, because maybe it's just a thing between you and I'm not really sure. But I like hitting things head on. I think there's room for growth, and I think that we can work really well together. We have on other projects. So I'm eager to see what happens in the next 6 months.
Very good. Thank you for your candidness, Commissioner. Sean, anything?
Yes, Commissioner McCarley, thank you for the comments, and I've heard you, and I will work on the areas that you pointed out. I just would like to say, though, however, that any challenges in the forms of communication does not have anything to do with how you voted during the search for the city manager. I understand your position in that as an elected leader, as the voice of the community. You were looking out for the community's best interests, and we've talked about that. I've talked with each commissioner about that. I fully respect and will always fall second to that notion. So I would like maybe, and it doesn't have to be today, but maybe one-on-one, you and I can have some conversations about how you would like for me to communicate with you, whether it's more emails or more text or phone calls. I certainly want to be transparent with the commission. And so, I can make whatever adjustments necessary so that you feel like you have the full information. I do appreciate the comment that you made. I will say one of the biggest challenges of this job is working with 7 different individuals. And so sometimes some of the things that I hear, from some of the commissioners isn't really the same as others, on some of the decisions that you folks are faced with. And it's very hard then to try to, satisfy each one, but maybe there's a better way for me to just communicate, what some of the challenges are without any ex parte, communications, which we're forbidden from having, and we will not have. But I look forward to the conversations we can have about how I can better communicate with you and what your preferences are in that fashion. And I will work hard to satisfy you. And I appreciate the positive reinforcements on the other areas as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Commissioner Walker?
Commissioner Walker, you're still muted, sir. So you can do a restart.
Okay, we're rewinding now. Please forgive me. And thank you, Dr. Ross, for this process. And thank you to my fellow colleagues who've already shared. I would not want to be redundant in sharing some things that have already been said. But certainly I wanted to say one thing I want to applaud City Manager Shiraz on, and that is the handling of the pandemic concerns. We were in the midst of this situation when you came on board, and I think the way it was handled and the way we got through it, try to make sure our city was kept operational but safe. When you talk about staff and the number of staff employed people that we do have, for lack of a better word, here at the city of Lakeland, and the many facilities that we have to be concerned about as well. I thought it was handled very well, considering some other places, as you know, has many challenges other than our particular city called Lakeland is. I do applaud you again, as I think both my fellow colleagues have done with, the operational side of the administration. I have always seen, and what I have seen before you became a manager, an assistant, a deputy manager, I guess we call it, where you took your job very seriously, and I think that's important for me to know that's done very seriously and to operate in that particular vein with your staff and of course senior staff areas and with us as fellow commissioners. Let me just share too. I think my hats off to thank you for what I heard. I think it was Commissioner Madden that mentioned things about the LRH negotiations. I too applaud you for that, but also I applaud you for thinking outside the box when it came to ban the box. I think here in our city, I have a concern, not only I think, but I do share on a number of occasions how I think it's important to be inclusive and how we can make sure that we are. And some things have to be done to bring about that particular process. So I applaud you for your efforts in that particular effort, and you did that. You promised that, even in your going out in the community, as you did with the different groups that you spoke before, as you were going through the city manager selection process. So I thank you for that. But let me share a couple of things I think have not been said that I would not want to again be redundant in applauding your efforts, and that is, I think it's important that we do get this three-leg stool completed. It was mentioned, I think, just now by Commissioner McCauley, maybe. That's going to relieve, of course, you some pressure. I know it will. I will hope it will. And then provide support that you need, because you being at the helm as you are for us as a city and having to juggle, these things that you're juggling. I know putting another person up here, to be part of the three-leg stool that we have, can do nothing but release some of the pressure for you and provide even more support for you. And I think it's coming. I understand it's supposed to be coming soon. So we'll hopefully have that completed. Another particular area that I had some reservation maybe about and don't know all the particular details, so you have to share that with me. I want to make sure that, our city manager is one that's very visible in the community, not just some particular components of our community, but all over the population of the city of Lakeland. And I speak particularly when it comes to our Neighborhood Association Coalition. That group is a very, I think, important group to our community called Lakeland. And I think sometimes it's important I know it's important to have our city manager, on occasion, speak to that group and of course know how they relate and share things with us as a commission, and of course another senior staffers about the challenges that some of our components of our city are having when it comes to our neighborhoods and challenges that some of these particular neighborhoods are dealing with. I may be speaking off cuff here, but I think it's important that you make yourself a little more available to that particular group, and find, every now and then, as you are with other groups and other areas of our city that, help make Lakeland run as efficiently as it is. I end there, but because again, I want to be redundant. Some of the applause that you need to hear about, but you already shared with both Commissioner Band and Commissioner McCauley.
Thank you, Commissioner Walker. Sean?
Thank you, Commissioner Walker, for the comments and great points. I have had over the last 6 months, some opportunities to get out into the community and to interact, with other several different groups and committees and the like. Have had a good relationship so far with Mr. Terry Coney, and I've attended some of the events that have been put on by Mr. Mitchell. And I've had, an opportunity to get out into all areas of the community, but not as much as I would prefer. And so to your point, once we've got a full team here and some of that, can be taken off of my plate, I look forward to nothing more than that. I love this community. I love the people in it, and the opportunity to get out there and interact when I have had those opportunities. It's some of the best times and some of the things I like most about this job. So I appreciate the encouragement. And as we move forward and round out the team here, I promise and commit to you that I'll be able to get out more frequently throughout the community than I have thus far. So thank you very much.
And Mr. Ross, if I could, I want to just, because I think Commissioner McCauley did share, or she wanted to hear, I guess, from us, those of us as our fellow colleagues about communication. If I could share that a little bit very quick, I think we have an open line of communication. I want to say that to my fellow colleagues that I have that with my city manager. I know when I've called and don't try not to call too often, but when I do call, you're available and you do get back. And sometimes the things I may call about may take time for you to respond and getting the information is needed. But I found that communication, I thought, between us has been concise and response has been very well, and I think in somewhat of a timely manner. I want to make sure I said that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McLeod?
Thank you, Dr. Ross, and thank you, Sean, for doing this with us, being part of this process. I think it's helpful. I know that it's an interesting, I'm sure, dynamic to have 7 of us in different areas for improvement and different positives and things that we're seeing. But for me, it's helpful to listen to my colleagues. This is the first time we've been able to do this. And so I'll start with what I see as some of the opportunities for improvement, and then finish out with the areas of success, or where I would encourage you to continue. And so to both Commissioner Walker and Commissioner McCarley's points about communication, I believe there are, I'd like to see more proactive communication from you. I think you're great. You're responsive whenever I request information or meetings, and I know up to the frequency of our one-on-ones, and that's been helpful. Maybe a weekly update from you would be helpful to know what are the major items that the city and staff are working on. I feel like many times there's stretches that go by, and I agree with Commissioner McCarley. I think there's times when maybe the mayor has a little bit of a head start, but the rest of us, it seems like we don't know what's happening. And I know that's challenging because you have 7 of us and you have a lot to manage, but I would just encourage you to look for more ways to be proactive in communications and lean toward over communicating on items and keeping us in the loop. One of the items I know we will rate on at the formal review is the management of the department. And so that one for me, if I had to score that right now, I would probably put it at a below expectation, simply because I really had hoped that deputy position and senior team would have been filled out by now. I was hoping for that early in the year. And so I'm encouraged to hear that's coming. I think that's coming soon. But I will go back to Commissioner Madden's point about the senior team as a whole, just knowing, do we have the right people and talent? Are the positions structured the way they need to be? And for me, it's a question mark right now. I'm not saying that. I think there's time between now and the formal review for that to change. And so we're not giving a score today. But I did want to mention that, so you know that it's on my radar and something that there's time to improve that between now and then. I would encourage you to continue building those external relationships in the community, and looking at the things that you've done in speaking engagements and interactions with groups. It's great. There's a lot that was on there that I wasn't aware of, and I was encouraged that you're out and doing speaking engagements and videos and podcasts and being out in the community. But to Commissioner Walker's point, I would encourage you to continue doing more of that and being involved. And I know that's hard when you haven't had as much staff support, or we've been down a position. So hopefully that will improve, and you'll be able to do more of that in the coming months as you have more of your team in place. On the positive side, and there's a lot, Sean. I mean, I think you've had to manage a lot in the first part of this year. I concur with my colleagues about the major wins on the hospital lease, the police union contract that is coming before us today, and just the negotiation skills that takes to get those across the finish line and keep parties together. I know those are not small feats. Strategic planning and budget process, I think those changes have been great, very welcome, and want to see more of that in the future. I would compliment your downtown changes. We talk about incremental changes and some of the things you've done recently and helping to get, it may seem small to people, but getting lights strung across Kentucky and helping to bring Buena Market here recently. And just as you have mentioned to me, you've heard our desire to have a more vibrant downtown, and you're making some operational changes that you can do under your authority that I think over time will make a big difference. And so I commend you for that. And then just your commitment to the city commission being the policymakers and the legislative body. And I know you have talked about that a lot since the interview process, but I see that in practice, that when the commission makes a decision, you're committed to it and you communicate that to staff and you're behind us and you go to work for that. And so I just encourage you to continue that as well. Thank you for letting us share some of this with you today. And yeah, I'll kick it over to you for any feedback.
Just again, thank you very much. And I hear the communications piece. And so I will work on that. And I appreciate the suggestion about maybe just some routine updates that I could get out potentially maybe through an email. And so I'll look at those options and work harder to try to just make sure that the commission is informed about, some of the just workings that go on. And hearing this, I will say what I've probably erred on is a lot of times when I update the commission, it's at the final product. And so I'm working with staff and we're working behind the scenes and we're, trying to take the direction of the commission and make things happen. And then I like to just deliver the success or the win to the commission. And it sounds like I need to be keeping more updates throughout the process. And so I hear that and I'll commit to making a better way for us to communicate that. And I very much do, Commissioner, appreciate your comments about the downtown and some of those incremental changes that have happened recently. I've had an opportunity just last week to meet with one of the business owners down there. And actually it was a business owner who, felt there were a few challenges and there certainly are, but, overall, to hear about the success of the Saturday night Buena market and the lighting and the buzz about that in the community, it just has me pumped up. I can't wait to do more. And, I haven't yet commented about staff, but I've said before, we've got the best staff in the business. And that is an example. And I would like to just share that very quickly. That is a perfect example. I had been meeting with staff for some time about the idea of the lighting over Kentucky, something I really wanted to see. And for several meetings, excuse me, for several meetings, I heard reasons why we couldn't make that happen. And so finally one day in a meeting, I expressed some frustration that, I've heard all these reasons why we can't do it, but I've not yet had anybody tell me how we can do it. That's all it took. Staff heard that. They went and figured out a solution that was innovative. We knew we had issues with attaching the anchor bolts to the buildings, but to decide we could run electricity to the tree and attach them to the trees in a way that we can also easily disassemble them during a hurricane. Staff did a fantastic job. And I can't tell you, I was pleased to come in that next morning and go find Steve Platt and Steve Williams and Bob Donahue and others that were involved to give them a high five and thank them for being innovative, for thinking differently and making it happen so quickly. And so while I can take a little bit of a credit for the idea and the encouragement, it's our staff who does it every single day. And it's a thrill and an honor for me to work with all of those folks. So thank you, Commissioner.
Very good. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. It's good to see you again. Okay, where do I start? Again, well, first of all, I'll probably get some kudos again. I can't say enough. I think Chad and Stephanie covered a lot of issues that on the notes that I had made. And of course, there again, Philip made some issues and concerns there. Again, I think once this COVID stuff gets past us a little bit more, we'll be able to get more out in public. I know I'm not out as much as I used to be. Subsequently, I don't get to see the people that I normally would get to see. And hopefully this will come about. I think the first Friday just started again. So I think that'll be a big plus. And of course, what else is going on downtown? And of course, I want to do for the police union, the staffing, and our new lease with our new salary caps and stuff with them. The other thing is I'm probably at City Hall about not much as Bill, but I'm pretty close to here, so Phil's here quite a bit. And so again, my line of communication doesn't seem to be an issue. I guess the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Sean is always available whenever the doors open. I'm liable to just step in and say hi if he's busy. And I probably do the same. I do the same thing with Emily too. So I hope they don't mind. I just kind of pop in impromptu, and if there's something I want to talk about, I lay it on them. And most of the time, I get some either positive or negative response one way or the other. But invariably, I'm not too shy about doing that. Then I'm looking forward to, again, I've been waiting for this new staff to materialize. I assume we're making some promotions within, which is, I think, is great. I haven't seen any searches going on, so I think that's going to be something I've been waiting for, anticipating me for a while. Ironically, when I was in North Carolina, my email went out, and I kept checking all the time, trying to get this, if I could find out who's going to be number 2 or 3, whatever else. And now I find out I still don't know. But invariably, that's all I really have to say. And I look forward to making some better response towards the end of the year. There again, I'm elated that you're here, and I think you've done a great job so far. Thank you.
Sean?
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. And it's always great to have the city commissioners in City Hall when you're able to make it. And certainly we love when the commissioners pop in and have questions, or, call for services for constituents or information. And I know I can speak for Emily, who you visit, that she appreciates that as well. And I will admit, and I think, and I'm hearing a lot of it today, I am one who very much likes that verbal opportunity, to meet face to face and have the conversation. And I think I'm going to need to make some changes there and probably get more into the written form. And so I will certainly do that. But every opportunity we have to visit and speak face to face is appreciated. And I appreciate your support, Commissioner Reed.
Very good. Commissioner Music, as you're witnessing this for the first time, this is part of a process that has been very effective in improving the effectiveness of the organization and retaining talent in the city management team and so forth. I will offer, between now and the formal review process, which is in about 5 months, 6 months, 5 months, if you want to reach out, we can talk one-on-one about sort of the history of it and how to prepare for it and all that wonderful stuff. But for the time being, any intermediate feedback you want to provide for the city manager?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Roth. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be any newer than I am, because today is my first actual meeting. So, but when I had considered running, one of the first phone calls that I made was to Sean's office to set up a meeting, and had a great meeting, and have really been excited to hear the positive notes that are coming from people. As a small business owner, I ask my guys all the time. I keep saying, and we have a construction company. I say, what business are we in? And they'll always say, oh, we're roofing. And I said, no, we're in the communication business, because if we don't communicate well, it doesn't matter what product we have. So that, as I'm hearing the fellow commissioners speak, I mean, that again is one thing that I'm always beating into other people, because I know that probably isn't my strong suit. So my hope is, Sean, that you and I will be able to develop that rapport and that communication to be able to, answer the questions for the citizens. It comes down to us providing the service that our citizens are looking for, and that starts with them, goes through us and to you. And I appreciate the candor of the commissioners as they're kind of telling you what they've dealt with since you've been there. But I look at it like this: there was 125 or so candidates fighting for that position, and you beat them out. I think there's a reason. I think that you've got some great qualities and some traits and some experience that I'm really looking forward to working with. So I just appreciate the time, and Dr. Ross, I'll certainly take you up on that and try to catch myself up to speed. So thank you guys very much.
Very good. And Sean, any comments for the commissioner?
Just thank you and welcome, Commissioner Music. I look forward. We've had some great meetings. I've got a schedule to meet some tours that we can take you around and let you meet some of our staff and visit some of the areas that may not always be as accessible. So I'm just looking forward to that. And again, as I've said, I will commit to making much more effort in the communication line, and I appreciate your comments on that and the way that you talk to your employees about that. That's I very much I like the take on that. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. And communication does go both ways. So thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
I'm waiting here. There we go. My delay on the click is long. I have really enjoyed listening to each of my fellow commissioners' comments, and it is a delight to work with a team that I think has best interest at heart. I am also grateful to our Commissioner Always Selvage for being able to introduce this entire process as something as a suggestion, and Larry for your execution of it. So I will not reiterate all of the pluses except for a couple that I want to highlight that maybe weren't mentioned. And one of those is the continuation of your representation among the county's city managers and the county manager as well as your touch within the state. That's important to us. Your networking is important to us. Your awareness of what's going on with them and what their concerns are and how Lakeland fits into that mix is something that's easy for us to miss because we don't live in that world, but we are impacted by it. And so I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank you for the continued work on the Cultural Heritage Center that we're getting done at the library, because I think that's going to be such an important addition to coming along. And then after we made the hospital lease decision for that public endowment improvement endowment fund creation, and then a board which is in place. So thank you for getting all that done. I have three areas of opportunities, and I'm going to talk about those as opposed to all the good things that have been mentioned, which I would concur, and I'm going to have you assume that I agree with those other earlier positive comments. My areas are three: supervision and leadership, communications, and management style. And it's been good to hear. I'll start with relationships. One that I didn't mention, this relationships with the commissioners first, and then I'll hit those three. On the relationships with the commissioner side, Annika, and the fact that part of my desire and presence to be available a lot is for the advancement of issues as they come along and the soundboarding. It makes me, and I want to apologize to fellow commissioners, makes me feel badly if I'm ever working in an assumptive way and not recommunicating. And I was even thinking to myself, and we all wrestle with this whole area of sunshine, perhaps I could even do an email that I send to Tracy that says, here's some things that had occurred from at least my vantage point, and I'd like some feedback from you. This is not that review, but I'd like some feedback onto whether or not you think that might be worthwhile as well, because I could do a weekly kind of, here's some of the things in the box. I wouldn't want it, however, to outweigh what I think you can do as a city manager in communicating. And I agree with your conclusion, Sean, on I think you need more written communications. The reality is our teeth were cut with Tony's higher degree level of those communications. And so it kind of became our appetite and diet. And he was good at that. You know, he was good at doing and I don't think they were intended to be on a week, but there'd be a lot of bullets throughout the thing that he had been working on. And we got a sense of his momentum in that. And I know you are an eyeball-to-eyeball preference person, but time is our biggest limiter. And so as long as no one's offended in the process of that, I think that's great. So I'm not trying to suggest that mine would even be in the same hemisphere, and it may be not even necessary, but it does. And I want to apologize formally if there are any of those assumptive moments, because my goal is not to do that. My goal is to literally try and be representative. And we don't always know, and everyone has a voice, and I get 1/7 of a vote, for what we do, and I recognize that. So in the three areas, this supervision and leadership, whereas I think, and Sean, you and I have talked a little bit about this, I think where there's opportunities, the two areas I see in this area that as a city that can go well, and it's one that engages your personnel, is you can inspire wonderfully, and so availability to do that, increasing in the departmental level, I think is important. And again, to the other commissioners' points, if you have two other staff members in place, it starts to give you more mobility to do that. And the second is that I think we have to make sure that we are always working to let as much decision be made at the level, at the front line of where those decisions can occur. And so we would always talk about that from not micromanaging, and I'm not suggesting you are, because let's review in 6 months' time, 1 month of it was almost COVID. Okay. And in terms of having to deal with COVID as problems, you had to deal with COVID also personally. And that's debilitating, you know, in a period of time like that. So when you look at what we have gotten accomplished, what you have gotten accomplished, you've done a ton in that first 6 months period of time. But the more we are proactively encouraging our department heads to make decisions and for their teams to be empowered, that's what multiplies incrementally the way that the machine can work. And so that's an encouragement I think that, and a great opportunity ahead for you. And I don't doubt your ability to do it. It's just getting engaged to get that done. On the communication side, I've really talked about the written side of that, but the other side that is important is less with us, eyeball to eyeball, more with staff and people. And then in the last area, management style, yeah, I think you do a really good job of listening. I think you do a really good job of, as I said earlier, being able to inspire and communicate clearly. We can mistake your processing and quietness for an inaction and maybe or a delay in thinking, when what you're doing in a very orderly way is listening, assimilating, thinking about the options. I can see you play chess sometimes in your head with the things that people are doing, and that's good. But it may not always come out in terms of a summary sentence, in terms of, okay, I've heard you, I'm going to do A, B, C. And for me, that probably means I need to talk to blank and blank, and I will probably be able to get us an answer on that by blank. You know, so that just summary sentence that takes place sometimes can be misread, and would be true for any one of us who are processors, good processors, as perhaps sometimes being confused or deer in the headlights, when that's not in fact what it is. It's very much a part and parcel of just how you're thinking and working through things. I get to see the benefit of that because I can see you 2 hours later and we can pick up on something, and not everybody else can do that, and I recognize that. I will end by saying I am very encouraged. I think your opportunities to be out within the community, your opportunities to be at national conference recommendations and to grow, which was one of Commissioner McCarley's early comments on, let's invest a lot in your ability when we were first making the selection over the course of the year, are things we must put on the calendar. And they need to be the most optimal next steps from your view of what you think you need to be doing and accomplishing. And we want to invest in that. We are excited in investing in you as you go along. And that means that we expect to see the wind that's getting in the sails. And, you know, to some degree, we've deployed a sailboat here. And we're starting to open up some sails and starting to let some air get caught. And I have great confidence when you throw that jib sail out that we're going to crank and go. And I appreciate the deliberateness of setting the course and getting started first. Thank you.
Sean, anything for the mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the comments. And again, reiterating some of the things that I have heard from the other commissioners, and really is the intent behind what we are doing today. And so I loved the coachable moment that you just gave me, because you're right. I am deliberately a thinker, and I try to listen oftentimes more than speak. But that your comment about a summary statement is a good one. And so I will keep that in mind, and rather than just sometimes taking it in and thinking through it, I'll deliver a summary statement so that the commissioners can really kind of see where I'm at, rather than you know, maybe an impression that I'm confused or not taking action. So that's a great coachable comment, and I appreciate it very much, and enjoy working with you, and appreciate your leadership as the mayor.
Very good. I want to thank all of the commissioners for participating being prepared. This is, it's hard to believe that every organization doesn't do this, but in fact, very few organizations do this with their leadership. So give you all your own pat on the back for, again, continuing this kind of best practices and continuous improvement. I will work with Sean and the mayor on setting up the formal review process in about 4.5, 5 months, leading up to Sean's annual anniversary of his appointment. And you'll have, you please provide me or Sean or the mayor with feedback about something you'd like to see covered in the dimensions that may not be covered today. I always start with the person being reviewed and make sure that they're comfortable with what's there. So we'll pick up on that. And I'll follow up briefly with Sean on that process after today. But thank you all for your time and continuing the process. Mr. Mayor?
So in that regard, are there any comments from commissioners that you'd like to make? And Larry, if you don't mind, and I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but give us a little timeline of how you'd like to see your role going forward in this process. I know we're certainly going to have you involved in the fall, but can you speak to us a little beyond that?
I'm mostly looking out for you all, believe it or not. I mean, I've got time on my hands, so being able to participate and because of the disruptive nature of the COVID pandemic and the rapid acceptance of this kind of meeting, it is entirely possible for me to continue longer. But I think in the long-term interest of the city of Lakeland, we should be looking at someone more conveniently located, more accessible, who could continue this process with improvements, changes, down the road in the coming 18 months, let's say. So I just would like to see there be continuity, not necessarily the same thing over and over again, but continuity in the communication and the flow of communication between this board and their two employees. So
that's very helpful to us, and I think we want to respect you as well in the process, which is part of the reason we asked that question, because we have appreciated the continuity you provided, and we don't want to usurp it at a level. But on the other hand, if you coach us a little bit this way, that's great and gives us the freedom to do some of that pursuit. Don't forget, if you want to head it and shoulder shots, by the way, before this meeting ends, that's available to us at 2:30. Before our meeting today, and then we'll also take a commission meeting picture prior to the meeting as well. All right. Anything else on any other party's part? Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor. Should I speak at the end, or are we finishing up? But after hearing everyone's conversations about the communication, it really did bring me back as a new commissioner. Tony was the city manager and Brad Johnson was the deputy. And at that time, the mayor commented about Tony's communication style. Obviously, that was one of his strong suits. But early on, if you remember, Brad Johnson really gave us the communique every week of what was happening, where we needed to be, he was very proactive. And, from the very beginning, this is where you're going to be trained. These are the things, we're going to go on these tours. These are the meetings coming up. And so I did want to encourage Sean and actually ask my colleagues their preference. We are on a limited management team and have had a missing component. And so there's a little bit of, an unfairness with regard to how much Sean personally can do. And if we really do want him to use his best skill, which is face-to-face, and get more in the community and to really focus on those face-to-face opportunities, I would look to my colleagues and the mayor and to Sean to say, when you're thinking about the team, and if you hear Commissioner McCarley and Commissioner McLeod and saying, you have to remember, we don't know anything. I mean, we know nothing unless the city management team communicates that to us. You are our lifeline to the staff, to the organization, and we can't talk to the mayor, and we can't talk to each other. And so when you think about your city management team, and I know that you are having to, be delayed in sharing, what you know about that hire, if the city manager, the deputy city manager, or it's the assistant city manager, their strong suit is a written communication. What do my colleagues think about them taking that on to say they're just the ones that are making sure we know more, that they're just saying, hey, everybody, this is where we're supposed to be today, this is what we're doing, this is the progress on the broadband, this is the progress on this, so that Sean doesn't have to necessarily take away from all the other things that we heard and celebrated and want him to do face to face to make sure we're up to speed. So I did want to I just kind of I kept thinking about that with regard. Well, I would go to Brad Johnson in those early days just to get the basic information of where we were on all the different committees and things. And I didn't feel like I was keeping him from, the most important, business of the day that a city manager, needs to attend to.
Good comment. And again, you're wanting to make a suggestion of other means. Chad, I saw your hand, and Commissioner McLeod, and then also Commissioner Walker after that.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner Madden. I think that's a practical suggestion. It would, to me, it seems like that would work. I don't necessarily have a preference if that written communication comes from Sean on something like that on a weekly, here's what's happening type basis. I think there are some things that probably need to come from him, but that one I can see, especially if you've had experience with Brad in a different style where it worked well. So yes, to me, that would make sense. I wanted to ask Dr. Ross, we talked about at Palmer's review about the concept of doing 360 reviews or having some input from staff and people who are under the city manager and the city attorney. Did we ever come to a conclusion on that, or just wanted to see where that is and if that's something we need to be thinking about as we get toward the end of the year?
Yeah, that has come up in years past as the 360 process came into vogue, and there were under City Manager Doug Thomas, there was a request for that, and Doug had a pretty good reply to it at the time. And I might encourage you to reach out to him individually to ask him, but his perspective was that it was somewhat inappropriate in this particular structure, where the nature of the board being the city manager or the city attorney's boss, and he felt like there was an HR solution to it, but not a formal 360-degree review, that it had implications that might result in unintended consequences.
Thank you. I would, and I'm not saying we have to do the 360 review process, but if there's some way to incorporate feedback from staff, I think that would be helpful for me. And I look at the box on management style and management of the department, and I think we have a limited view of that. So I don't know if there's a way to get that without having a 360 review that's problematic in the public sector, but it's something, if there's some method where we could gather that works in the public sector, I would support it.
Well, I would say that most organizations accomplish that through some form, and I know Lakeland has had some mixed experience with this as well, but through some form of employee engagement survey. So it's part of a bigger process. So asking the employees, the staff, the line folks, how things are going, and being open to that feedback in that process. You can ask about how the senior leadership team is doing. You could talk to Joe Tedder, for instance, who has a very proactive, employee-centered approach to that. And they ask about the senior leadership team, and not by name necessarily, but certainly by responsibility and expectations. So there are ways to do it, but I think it probably should... The city commission should probably seek advice, maybe from former Commissioner Salvage, about how to approach that within the context of the Lakeland culture and the city of Lakeland operations.
Okay, thank you.
Big question, Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I even share some of the things I thought, one of the things I wanted to share and piggyback on what Commissioner Madden said, you're right, Mr. Ross. Commissioner Savage, even if we recall the discussion that we had early on about the 360 type of approach, he kind of warned us because of the kind of leadership style that we have. We're a council manager form of government we have two bosses. We have two employees and they have 7 bosses. And, he was concerned about that when he mentioned it as for, I think it was concerned from an HR perspective. So it is a very delicate, I think, situation, because as we approached that conversation and talked about it, he had, from an HR perspective, some things that he had shared about that particular approach. So I think you said it somewhat also, Commissioner Ross, about that. And I'm very concerned because I know we are responsible for 2 people. And we hire these 2 people. They hire and supervise their people. And I look at it like that, for lack of a better word. But certainly, I have appreciated in my 12 years almost, where now I'm having to say 3 city managers, 3 different types of city commissions, where we've had the I guess you call the fluid way of being able to talk to any of our department heads. I have not had any one of the city managers that I have had I guess supervision over to stop me or want to correct me. Not that they would, of course, I guess, but from talking to different ones under their leadership and under their supervision, because I pick up the phone and call whomever. And I would say you all do the same thing. And I know only thing I can say about our current city manager, I know he had asked coming on board as he did, and correct me if I'm wrong, City Manager Shirouse, if we found that we needed to get some things taken care of that was not just as simple or as fluid again, he wanted to make sure he was connected. He wanted to make sure he knew to make sure that the things get done, get accomplished. So that's my little spiel about that. But I certainly appreciate what you're saying, Commissioner McLeod, because I just call different ones to talk to them. Maybe I shouldn't, but I think we've got to respect the type of form of government that we have as well. It was a council manager form of government. We have just 2 employees in some sense. Surely, I think it's important for us to know how the line, those in line or those in sync, what and say about the operation of our city as a whole. Okay, but now back to what you said, Commissioner Madden. I found that we've had 3 different styles too. When I say my comment now, my 3 different city managers, my 3 different mayors, my 3 different commissions we have had 3 different styles. And Mr. Ross, I think you could probably attest to that as a way. Now I'm under here with my colleagues as you are. It's different than what it was with me, say some 6 years ago with that commission. And even before that, when I came on the city commission, this is different. So I find that, we, things change, things happen, of course, for the better. And we want things for the better for our city. I say we all want that. And want to make sure that we have, the kind of operation and kind of functions in place to make Lakeland what we all want it to be. And I can appreciate that from all of you all. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Walker. And I would encourage that when you're not meeting with and talking to people directly, as Commissioner Walker has just said, and you're emailing them, just always copy City Manager Strauss. If I send an email to a staff person, I want to know that he knows that this is what I was saying to that staff person. I'm trying, and I want this staff person I'm sending it to know that he knows. I mean, it's just good all the way around. Shortens the distance between 2 points. It's succinct, and off you go. It burdens his mailbox a little bit, but at least you know that we aren't going rogue on you in the process of those contacts. So I would encourage that's one way to do that too. Any other summary comments from you, Mr. Ross?
No.
All right then. Seeing no other hands in the air, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for this meeting, and don't forget to take your picture. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.